Have you ever wondered why so many relationships fail for exactly the same reasons that Nietzsche predicted more than a century ago? The most common mistake we make is ignoring the cruel yet precise observations this philosopher made about female nature. While modern society insists on denying these truths, relationships continue to crumble, following patterns he identified with frightening accuracy. Soon, I will reveal Nietzsche's most controversial insight that will completely change your perception of the dynamics between men and women. Woman learns to hate to the extent that she unlearns how to enchant, he provocatively stated in one of Western philosophy's most controversial declarations. Prepare to discover the warnings Nietzsche made about women that nobody wanted to believe, uncomfortable truths that continue to be silenced, but which could save you from a lifetime of deception in your most intimate relationships. What if everything you thought you knew about female behavior was merely a carefully constructed illusion? Nietzsche dared to peel back this veil of deception when few others would. In his provocative work, Beyond Good and Evil, he boldly claimed that woman's great art is the lie, and her highest concern is appearance and beauty. This statement, shocking to many, reveals a fundamental truth about the female strategy for survival and advancement in a world historically dominated by male physical strength. Nietzsche observed that women have developed an extraordinary talent for performance, the ability to present themselves in ways that serve their interests while concealing their true intentions. Far from being a moral failing, he saw this as an evolutionary adaptation, a sophisticated defense mechanism developed through centuries of navigating male-dominated societies. The feminine mask, according to Nietzsche, is not worn out of malice, but necessity. Consider how women throughout history have had to rely on indirect influence rather than direct power. Without physical dominance or institutional authority, they developed unparalleled skills in psychological manipulation. The feminine arts of seduction, charm, and social intuition became refined tools for survival and advancement. The carefully applied makeup, the strategic displays of emotion, the calibrated vulnerability, all elements of what Nietzsche called dissimulation born of weakness. The error most men make is misinterpreting this performance as deception rather than adaptation. They fail to recognize that women's indirect approach to power is neither inferior nor dishonest. It is simply different, born of different evolutionary pressures. Nothing is more foreign to women than truth, wrote Nietzsche, not as an accusation, but as an observation that women prioritize effective communication over literal accuracy. This mastery of appearances manifests in women's heightened sensitivity to social cues and perceptions. They instinctively understand that reputation and perception often matter more than reality, a lesson many men learn too late. Women's social intelligence, their ability to read rooms and navigate complex social hierarchies, represents an alternative form of power that operates according to different rules than male dominance hierarchies. The feminine approach to conflict further illustrates this divergence. While men often confront issues directly through verbal or physical confrontation, women typically employ more subtle strategies: isolation of opponents, strategic alliance building, and reputation management. These indirect approaches are not signs of weakness, but of sophisticated social intelligence. Nietzsche's controversial insight was recognizing that these feminine strategies are neither inferior nor superior to masculine approaches, but fundamentally different tools evolved for different purposes. The female focus on appearance and social perception represents a profound understanding that human societies operate largely on surface impressions rather than deeper realities. The true power of femininity lies not in brute force, but in the ability to shape perception. Women intuitively grasp that controlling how others perceive reality can be more powerful than controlling reality itself. This explains their heightened attention to symbolic gestures, meaningful gifts, and commemorative occasions, all elements that men often dismiss as superficial, but which actually shape the emotional narrative of relationships. Nietzsche warned that men who fail to understand this fundamental difference in approach are doomed to perpetual confusion in their relationships with women. They misinterpret feminine behavior through a masculine lens, expecting direct communication when indirect communication is being employed. The resulting misunderstandings create the patterns of conflict that plague modern relationships. The wisdom in Nietzsche's analysis is not in condemning feminine approaches, but in recognizing their legitimacy and power. Understanding that women operate according to a different strategic logic, one that prioritizes appearance, perception, and indirect influence, allows for more effective communication across the gender divide. The mask of femininity is not a deception, but an adaptation, a sophisticated response to historical circumstances that continues to shape gender dynamics today. What men fail to understand about feminine love might be the most dangerous oversight in their lives. Nietzsche boldly confronted this reality when he wrote, "Woman wants to be taken. She wants someone to take her, to take possession of her." This provocative insight strikes at the heart of what makes modern relationships so fragile and unstable. A fundamental error that creates endless confusion in romantic dynamics is the mistaken belief that men and women experience love in the same way. According to Nietzsche, nothing could be further from the truth. For women, love isn't merely an emotion, but a complex strategy for security and fulfillment that operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Female love, in Nietzsche's analysis, is inherently possessive, where men often love idealistically, projecting their fantasies onto women and loving what they imagine rather than what exists. Women love pragmatically, seeing men as they are with startling clarity. This feminine pragmatism manifests as a desire not just for emotional connection, but for total possession of a man's attention, resources, future, and very identity. The possessive nature of female love stems from evolutionary imperatives that modern discourse often refuses to acknowledge. Throughout human history, women faced extreme vulnerability during pregnancy and child-rearing, requiring reliable protection and provision. This biological reality created a profound psychological need for security that expresses itself through possessive attachment behaviors that many men find suffocating or controlling. Nietzsche observed that women instinctively understand something that most men never grasp. Real love isn't about freedom, but about willing submission to possession. In love, a woman is more barbarous than man, he wrote, recognizing that female love demands complete surrender rather than the conditional affection most men offer. This explains why women often test men's boundaries and commitment through seemingly irrational emotional challenges. They're assessing whether a man will remain steadfast through difficulty. The maternal instinct provides a window into this possessive nature. A mother doesn't love her child conditionally. Her love is absolute, consuming, and expects total authority over the child's life. This same template often transfers to romantic relationships, creating expectations of devotion that few men are prepared to fulfill. When a woman truly loves, she doesn't merely want a man's present attention, but claims ownership of his past and future as well. This possessive love manifests in behaviors that modern sensibilities often label as toxic: jealousy, surveillance, emotional testing, and demands for constant reassurance. Yet Nietzsche recognized these not as pathologies, but as expressions of love's true nature from the feminine perspective. Women intuitively understand that genuine love is exclusive, demanding, and all-consuming, qualities that contemporary ideals of healthy relationships often pathologize. The tragedy of modern relationships emerges when men misinterpret these possessive behaviors as insecurity rather than as expressions of authentic, feminine love. The modern man, raised on ideals of independence and autonomy, recoils from what he perceives as attempts to control him, failing to recognize that a woman's desire for possession is her highest expression of value. When she seeks to possess, she declares the man worthy of her complete investment. Women's love also operates through transformation. Nietzsche noted that a woman in love seeks not just to possess a man, but to remake him according to her vision, to improve and perfect him. This isn't manipulation, but devotion. She invests in his potential because she has claimed him as her own. Men who resist this transformative aspect of feminine love create conflict where there could be growth, misinterpreting a woman's highest expression of care as nagging or control. The possessive nature of female relationships extends beyond romantic contexts. Notice how women's friendships often involve levels of emotional intimacy, disclosure, and mutual influence that many men would find intrusive. Female friends frequently claim rights to each other's time, secrets, and loyalty that mirror romantic possession. This isn't coincidental, but reflects the template of feminine love applied across relationship categories. Nietzsche's warning about female love isn't that it's flawed, but that it's misunderstood. The man who expects a woman to love him as he loves her, with reasonable boundaries, personal space, and conditional investment, is setting himself up for profound disappointment. Female love, in its authentic expression, doesn't recognize these limitations. It claims totally or not at all. The wisdom in understanding the possessive nature of feminine love lies not in resisting it, but in recognizing its value. When a woman seeks to possess you completely, she offers something few modern people experience: the chance to be fully known, fully claimed, and fully transformed through the power of genuine devotion. This isn't a trap, but an opportunity, if you have the courage to surrender to it. Have you ever wondered why even the most promising relationships eventually descend into power struggles? Nietzsche identified a fundamental truth that modern relationship experts desperately avoid. Conflict between men and women isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. The sexes deceive themselves about each other because at bottom they honor and love only themselves, he wrote, exposing the uncomfortable reality beneath our romantic ideals. The fatal misconception that dooms countless relationships is the belief that men and women ultimately want the same thing. Nietzsche recognized that male and female natures evolved with fundamentally different imperatives, creating a perpetual tension that no amount of communication or compromise can fully resolve. This isn't a pessimistic view, but a realistic one that could spare you years of frustration trying to solve an unsolvable equation. At the core of this conflict lies what Nietzsche called the will to power, the fundamental drive to extend one's influence and shape reality according to one's values. Both sexes express this will, but in profoundly different ways that create inevitable friction. Men typically seek power through direct confrontation, achievement, and dominance hierarchies. Women, by contrast, often exercise power through relationship, networks, emotional influence, and the manipulation of social perception. These contrasting approaches collide most dramatically in intimate relationships. A man values freedom, autonomy, and respect for his strength, wanting a partner who admires his capability without constraining his action. A woman values security, connection, and exclusive devotion, wanting a partner who fully surrenders to the relationship while maintaining the strength to protect it. These desires aren't merely different, they're often directly contradictory. Nietzsche observed this contradiction with remarkable clarity. Man's happiness is, I will. Woman's happiness is, he wills. The masculine drive for self-determination crashes against the feminine desire for mutual surrender, creating a fundamental tension that modern relationship advice trivializes as mere communication issues. No amount of communication can resolve this tension because it stems not from misunderstanding, but from opposing natural drives. The dating marketplace reveals this conflict in its rawest form. Men and women employ sophisticated strategies to maximize their advantage while minimizing vulnerability, a veritable battlefield of evolutionary psychology. Women test men's strength through emotional challenges, seeking to discover whether a man possesses both the power they desire and the willingness to submit that power to the relationship. Men, meanwhile, test women's authenticity, seeking to determine whether feminine charms mask manipulation or reflect genuine desire. Even language becomes a weapon in this conflict. Nietzsche noted that men and women speak different languages of love, not just in words, but in the meaning assigned to actions. A gesture that signifies devotion to a woman might represent weakness to a man. A behavior that demonstrates strength to a man might signal detachment to a woman. These language barriers create endless opportunities for misinterpretation that spark conflict even between well-intentioned partners. Modern society's attempt to erase these differences through gender-neutral ideologies has only intensified the conflict by driving it underground. When natural tensions between masculine and feminine natures cannot be acknowledged openly, they express themselves through passive aggression, emotional manipulation, and silent resentment. The refusal to recognize fundamental gender differences doesn't eliminate conflict, but makes it harder to resolve constructively. The bedroom becomes the ultimate battleground for this conflict. Sexual dynamics reflect power dynamics, with desire itself becoming a weapon in the larger war. A woman's sexual withdrawal or surrender represents a powerful tool for shaping a man's behavior. A man's sexual attention or indifference similarly influences a woman's security and self-perception. Even in our most intimate moments, the battle for power continues beneath the surface of pleasure. Perhaps most disturbing is Nietzsche's insight that neither sex truly wants this conflict to end. Complete victory would eliminate the tension that creates attraction in the first place. Men are drawn to the challenge that feminine resistance represents. Women are attracted to the strength that masculine persistence demonstrates. The very conflict that causes relationship suffering also generates the polarity that maintains desire, creating a paradox with no easy resolution. The wisdom in Nietzsche's analysis isn't fatalism, but strategic awareness. Understanding that conflict between the sexes is inevitable allows you to engage more effectively with its underlying patterns rather than being blindsided by them. Instead of asking how to eliminate conflict, the more productive question becomes how to harness its creative tension while minimizing its destructive potential. The war of the sexes cannot be won, but it can be fought with greater consciousness, skill, and mutual respect. Nietzsche's insight offers a path beyond naive optimism toward a mature acceptance of relationship dynamics as they actually exist, not as we wish they would be. This harder truth, once embraced, creates the possibility for deeper connection precisely because it acknowledges the real challenges instead of denying them. What if society's most sacred image, that of the selfless mother, conceals a darker, more complex reality that few dare to acknowledge? Nietzsche ventured where others feared to tread when he wrote, "Mothers find in their children satisfaction for their desire to dominate, a possession, an occupation, something that is wholly intelligible to them and can be chattered with." This provocative statement challenges our most cherished assumptions about maternal love. The fundamental misconception about motherhood, one that creates endless confusion in both family dynamics and gender relations, is the belief that maternal instinct represents pure, selfless devotion without any element of self-interest. Nietzsche recognized this as a comfortable fiction that obscures the complicated psychological reality of how women relate to their children. According to Nietzsche's analysis, maternal instinct combines genuine care with a powerful drive for self-extension and control. A mother doesn't simply nurture her child. She creates a being she can fully possess and shape according to her will. This possession satisfies deeply rooted psychological needs that extend far beyond mere biological imperatives. The child becomes a canvas for the mother's unfulfilled ambitions, a vehicle for her values, and a permanent emotional captive. This possessive element of motherhood manifests in behaviors that society rarely questions. Mothers who cannot respect boundaries between themselves and their children, who view their children's independence as betrayal rather than development, or who manipulate through guilt and obligation. These patterns aren't aberrations, but expressions of the maternal instinct's dual nature, part selfless protection, part dominating possession. Nietzsche observed that women often find in motherhood a power they cannot achieve elsewhere in society. The total dependence of an infant creates a relationship of complete dominance that satisfies the will to power in a uniquely feminine way. This isn't evil or calculating. It's a natural psychological compensation for the limitations women historically faced in other domains of power and influence. The possessive aspect of maternal instinct appears most clearly when children attempt to establish independence. A mother's resistance to her child's autonomy often reveals that her love contains elements of self-interest alongside genuine care. The common phenomenon of mothers who undermine their children's romantic relationships demonstrates this possessive quality. No partner is ever good enough because any deep attachment threatens the mother's primary claim. Society's idealization of motherhood as purely selfless creates impossible standards that burden women with guilt when they inevitably experience the self-interested aspects of maternal feeling. This idealization also blinds men to the complex psychological dynamics at play in mother-child relationships, dynamics that often serve as templates for romantic relationships later in life. Particularly revealing is the contrast between how society views maternal possessiveness versus paternal possessiveness. A father who exercises excessive control over his children is condemned as authoritarian. A mother exhibiting identical behaviors is often praised for her devotion and concern. This double standard reflects our collective unwillingness to acknowledge the will to power expressed through maternal instinct. The maternal relationship to truth further illustrates this complexity. Mothers routinely engage in noble lies, deceptions, believed to serve their children's interests. They manipulate information, manage perceptions, and construct narratives designed to protect and shape their children. These behaviors reveal that maternal love prioritizes beneficial outcomes over absolute truth, a pragmatic approach that Nietzsche recognized as neither good nor evil, but simply natural. Perhaps most controversially, Nietzsche suggested that motherhood represents a form of narcissistic extension, a way for a woman to reproduce herself and ensure her values persist through time. This doesn't negate genuine love, but acknowledges that maternal devotion contains elements of self-love and self-perpetuation alongside altruistic care. The child becomes both a separate being to protect and an extension of the mother's identity to preserve. The wisdom in Nietzsche's analysis isn't condemnation, but clarity, understanding the dual nature of maternal instinct, its mixture of selfless Protection and possessive control allows for more realistic expectations about motherhood. Women can acknowledge their complex feelings without guilt. Men can recognize maternal behaviors as expressions of natural psychological drives rather than manipulation or irrationality. This clearer perspective also illuminates why maternal patterns often transfer to romantic relationships. When a woman seeks to mother her partner, nurturing while controlling, protecting while possessing, she expresses the same dual instinct that defines maternal love. Men who understand this pattern can respond more effectively to its manifestations. Rather than being confused by its apparent contradictions, Nietzsche's insight about maternal instinct offers a path beyond sentimentality toward psychological realism. By acknowledging the complex mixture of care and possession that characterizes motherhood, we can relate more honestly to this fundamental human relationship instead of being blinded by idealized myths that serve neither women nor the children they raise. Have you ever noticed that women often operate according to moral principles that seem entirely foreign to men? Nietzsche penetrated this mystery with his observation that women are considered deep. Why? Because one can never discover any bottom to them. Women are not even shallow. This provocative insight reveals a fundamental truth about feminine morality that modern discourse refuses to acknowledge. The critical error that creates endless moral confusion between the sexes is the assumption that men and women share the same ethical framework. Nietzsche recognized that feminine morality operates according to fundamentally different principles, not inferior or superior, but alien to masculine understanding. This recognition explains countless relationship conflicts that otherwise remain mysterious. According to Nietzsche, masculine morality typically centers on abstract principles: justice, honor, consistency, and truth as objective values. Men judge actions against universal standards and expect similar treatment regardless of personal connection. By contrast, feminine morality operates through relational matrices where context, connection, and outcomes matter more than abstract principles. For women, the same action can be right or wrong depending on who performs it and how it affects relationships. This difference manifests most clearly in how each sex approaches truth. Men often value truth as an absolute good, believing honesty matters regardless of consequences. Women typically view truth as instrumental, valuable when it serves relational harmony, dispensable when it threatens connection. This isn't dishonesty, but a different moral paradigm where relationship preservation trumps abstract truthfulness. The feminine approach to justice further illustrates this divide. Masculine justice seeks impartial application of rules regardless of relationship. Feminine justice adjusts based on relational context. A woman might easily forgive a harsh word from someone she loves while never forgiving an identical statement from someone she dislikes, a contextual approach that men often misinterpret as hypocrisy rather than relational coherence. Nietzsche observed that feminine morality originated from historical vulnerability. Without physical strength or social authority, women developed ethical systems focused on maintaining harmony, manipulating perception, and securing protection through relationship management. These strategies weren't moral failures, but sophisticated adaptations to powerlessness that became encoded in feminine psychology. The feminine talent for moral shape-shifting particularly frustrated Nietzsche. He noted women's ability to sincerely adopt whatever moral position best served their interests in a given context. Religious, when it provided social advantage; progressive, when it offered new freedoms; traditional, when it secured protection. This adaptability isn't calculation but instinct. Women intuitively align with whatever moral framework best secures their position. This moral flexibility appears most dramatically in how women judge other women versus how they judge men. Women often ruthlessly enforce social and sexual standards against female competitors while simultaneously excusing identical behaviors in men they find attractive. This isn't hypocrisy, but pragmatic relational management. Different standards apply to allies, competitors, and potential partners. Loyalty in feminine ethics demonstrates similar contextual flexibility, where men often value loyalty to principles or commitments regardless of changing circumstances. Women typically prioritize loyalty to people and adjust their commitments accordingly. A woman might break a promise without guilt if circumstances change to make keeping it harmful to someone she cares about, prioritizing relational harmony over abstract consistency. Perhaps most controversially, Nietzsche suggested that feminine morality contains a fundamental pragmatism about power that masculine idealism often lacks. Women instinctively understand something many men refuse to acknowledge, that moral frameworks are ultimately tools for survival and advancement, rather than transcendent truths. This pragmatism allows women to navigate shifting social landscapes with remarkable adaptability. The wisdom in Nietzsche's analysis isn't judgment, but recognition. Understanding that men and women operate according to different ethical frameworks allows for more effective cross-gender communication. The man who expects a woman to value abstract consistency will be perpetually disappointed. The woman who expects a man to prioritize relational harmony will be similarly frustrated. This recognition also reveals why gender conflicts often seem irresolvable through logical argument. When a man and woman disagree about whether an action was right or wrong, they aren't merely disagreeing about facts, but operating from entirely different moral paradigms. No amount of evidence or reasoning will resolve such conflicts because the underlying values differ fundamentally. Nietzsche's perspective on feminine ethics challenges both traditional religious morality and modern progressive ideals. Religious traditions often condemned feminine moral flexibility as evidence of spiritual weakness. Progressive ideologies deny this flexibility exists at all. Nietzsche alone had the courage to acknowledge feminine moral difference without either condemnation or denial, seeing it as a natural adaptation deserving neither worship nor contempt. What if the greatest gift you could give your relationships isn't finding the perfect partner, but developing the wisdom to recognize and navigate these profound moral differences? Perhaps understanding the alien nature of feminine ethics is the first step toward genuine connection across the gender divide. The question isn't whether women are moral or immoral by masculine standards, but whether those standards apply at all to a fundamentally different ethical system. We'll see you on the other side. Take care and see you soon.